Georgia.
Mr. President, I rise today to talk about a crisis in my home state, and indeed 5 other states across the Southeast, to talk about disasters in California, and to talk about our friends in Puerto Rico. On October 10, 2018, Hurricane Michael made landfall on the Florida Panhandle as a Category 4 hurricane. It was one of the strongest storms to ever hit the United States. Over the next few hours, Hurricane Michael barreled through Florida and tore through southwest Georgia. In a matter of minutes, homes were flattened, tracts of timber destroyed, farmers' crops laid down in the field, and people's lives were radically affected forever. This hurricane hit at exactly the time of year when most crops were ready for harvest. It didn't matter, peanuts, cotton, pecans, they were all just beautiful this year. As a matter of fact, in the state of Georgia, Mr. President, I grew up working on our family farms there, and I have to say the cotton crop last year was probably the best I had ever seen. It was cruel almost. Agriculture today is Georgia's top industry and our #1 economic driver. Before the hurricane, farmers in my state were expecting a record harvest. Instead, their crops were completely destroyed. Shortly after the hurricane hit, President Trump, Vice President Pence, and Secretary of Agriculture Perdue all came down to Georgia. Together, we all toured the devastation and heard from farmers and local officials about the tough road of recovery ahead. Some farmers said they could clean up, replant, and have a crop next year as long as they had adequate resources. Other farmers were not so lucky. Georgia is the top pecan-producing state in the country. One of our largest pecan farms is owned by 2 brothers in Bainbridge that Vice President and I personally visited. We personally saw the damage in their fields. Some 800 acres of pecan trees gone, Mr. President. I cannot describe to you what that looks like. And on the ground was a solid carpet, if you can imagine this, a solid carpet of mature, beautiful, inch-long pecans, ready to be harvested, but on the ground ruined. One brother said, "The farmer in me wants to farm this land, but there's no way I can make it now. Next year is the year I'll lose it because we're not like the cotton guy, nothing against them, but they get to replant a seed next year and have a crop. We don't." The problem is that the pecan crop can be annually insured, but there is no insurance today for insuring pecan trees. If they replant, if these 2 brothers replant, it could take 7 to 10 years for the trees to mature enough to even generate a minimum revenue. And most likely, full production would take over 12 years. For them, this is truly a generational loss. The other brother said, "My brother and I built this business from nothing. We will make it. We may not be in the pecan business anymore, but we will be doing something else. We are fighters. Our families are committed to this land. You just have to go on." When they saw the devastation, President Trump, Vice President Pence stepped up to the plate and made a commitment to our agriculture community. President Trump said, "Farmers really got hurt here, especially in Georgia, but we're going to get it taken care of." Vice President Pence said, "We will rebuild these crops, these communities. We will restore southwest Georgia. We will restore the Sun Belt region bigger and better than ever before." Well, this afternoon, Mr. President, I'm here to say that the Vice President and the President are living up to their words. After this disaster relief was caught up in the political nightmare of funding the last 25% of this year's budget, we now have the opportunity to put this standalone supplemental appropriation bill on the floor of the United States Senate. The President and Vice President have been absolutely resolute in their support of getting aid to the victims of these disasters. They're now asking Congress to pass this all-inclusive disaster relief bill right now. The state of Georgia has already stepped up and offered tax credit, short-term financing, and other forms of direct assistance to these impacted. But they've only scratched the surface, Mr. President. The people of Georgia have come together and helped their neighbors, served meals to each other, and assisted first responders in their recovery efforts. In Florida alone, then Governor Rick Scott, who is now our colleague here on the Senate floor, actually suspended, he was in a race for this Senate seat, actually suspended his campaign to devote all of his time to his responsibility as governor in leading the effort to analyze the damage in Florida and to determine what needed to be done. He can speak directly to the need. He's a co-sponsor of this bill, I might add. However, despite efforts by Senator Isaacson and myself and others in our state, this Senate body has yet to take action on disaster relief for the agriculture community in the Southeast. Our farmers simply cannot wait any longer. The situation in my state is dire, and I would say it's the same across the South. Because revenue from the 2018 harvest was destroyed, bankers can't lend money to farmers who are now asking to borrow money to put seed in the ground right now, to fertilize the ground, to prepare the ground for the next year's crop. It's as simple as that. Growers cannot replant because they can't get their financial house in order because we haven't made the resolution from last year's harvest that they were not able to achieve. Rural communities are suffering. Economic activity is in many places at an absolute standstill, waiting for the federal government, this body, and the House of Representatives to do our jobs. For some in my state, the timing of assistance is not just a matter of putting a crop in the ground this year. It's a matter of potentially never putting a crop in the ground again. If we do not help these people right now, they may lose their businesses and livelihoods through no fault of their own. That's the reality we're facing here. The people in my state have asked me to utilize every sphere of influence, turn over every stone, exhaust all options to get disaster relief right now. We are past the time when this should have gotten done. I've spoken with the President many times about this. His commitment to our farmers is unwavering. Just last Monday night, he said, "David, get it done." He called me again Saturday night before he left for Vietnam. He said, "David, what do we have to do to get this bill across the Senate floor? Talk to our friends in the House. Make sure that everything is needed is in." Senator Isaacson and several other senators have introduced a supplemental disaster relief bill on the floor of the Senate, and President Trump has agreed to sign it. Our bill includes relief for agriculture. It also provides additional funds for Georgia and other states like Florida, Alabama, the Carolinas, Alaska, Hawaii, and California that have battled natural disasters over the last year on their own. It also builds on the Trump administration's past efforts and includes the remaining funding for Puerto Rico. Both the House and Senate have previously supported similar proposals, and we should be even more inclined to do so now that it's not tied up with the overall 2019 budget drama. This is a standalone supplemental bill, including those things that both people on both sides of this body have agreed to and voted for just last year. This bipartisan package is a win for our farmers. It's a win for families and businesses who were devastated by historic hurricanes in the Southeast and wildfires in the West. And it's a win for the people of Puerto Rico, who the President has previously helped and was committed to including that in this bill. I sincerely hope this body will move quickly and pass this disaster relief bill without further delay. I humbly ask each of my colleagues in this body for your individual support and for your vote in this disaster relief package that will save hundreds, if not thousands, of farming families in my home state from having to give up what they love, and that is farming the land that in many cases they inherited from generations of their families. And in other cases, where people who have graduated from HBCUs, some of our brightest young people, who have borrowed money to buy the land or leasing the land, are in danger of losing this dream of making a living on the ground in Georgia. Our country and our people are counting on us to get this done, and time is of the essence. Mr. President, I yield back, and I note the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.